Welcome. This is Dr. Simon-Cereijido. We are going to start Chapter 3 about assessment of language disorders. This is Lecture 4.A. You will need your notebook and a pencil handy. My first question is, what is assessment? Please look for a definition in your textbook or the dictionary and write it down in your notebook. In order to identify and describe language disorders, clinicians mainly use three types of assessments: norm-referenced tests, criterion-referenced tests, and dynamic assessment. Norm-referenced assessments are frequently used by clinicians. They are sometimes called standardized tests or formal tests. We use this type of test to answer the question on the screen. These assessments are designed to determine if a child has a language impairment. These tests are used to compare a child's abilities to peers. The test results are sort of a snapshot, a photograph of the child's abilities at the moment of testing. Would children with language disorders perform above or below the average of typically developing children? Of course, they will perform below average. These tests have many advantages. They are efficient to administer and they have a clear protocol. Please look for the definition of the word protocol and write it down in your notebook. They are also used to compute a standard score that allow us to compare a specific child to peers. These results are used to classify children for services and to document school achievement at the state and national level. Norm-reference tests have disadvantages too. The most important one is that the test is administered in unfamiliar contexts. What are potential consequences of this? You can check page 50 in your textbook. Write it down in your notebook. They can also over-identify children from minority cultures, resulting in mistaking a language difference for a language disorder. They are not useful to select specific intervention targets either. Criterion-referenced assessments are designed to determine how a child performs on a particular communicative or academic task. When we administer a criterion-referenced test, we compare the specific child's performance with a standard, with a goal. Think about course exams. There is a standard, a letter grade C, that corresponds to the minimum knowledge students need to demonstrate to complete the course. The items of criterion reference tests are usually organized in a developmental sequence, from easier to more difficult. The illustration of the checklist on the upper right is to remind you that these items are organized in a list in a sequence. These assessment tools are good to set the goals or the objectives of intervention. They are also good to document a student's progress during intervention. And there are criterion reference tests for all subdomains of communication. A disadvantage is that these tests do not have well-defined protocols. Once again, define what a not well-defined protocol may be. What could children do during administration of this type of test? Answer this question in your notebook. Dynamic assessments can determine a child's ability to respond to instruction. In contrast to norm-referenced and criterion-referenced assessments, that is, static assessments, dynamic assessments are used to determine whether the child have learning potential. These tests are used with children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Children who are developing typically usually make significant changes during the short-term teaching session. On the other hand, a child with language impairment cannot change performance with a brief exposure to the task. So with this type of assessment, we use a short-term teaching session, and we look at how well or how difficult it is for the child to learn a task. Take a moment and compare and contrast these three types of assessments. Write down the benefits of each type and the disadvantages of each type. And bring your questions and your ideas to our face-to-face class. Now, let's look at this illustration and try to put in words the type of question that is answered by each type of assessment. Write it in your notebook. So, in order to answer several questions, different assessment tools need to be used. So here, please read this slide and take notes, compare with your textbook, and so because these are the important concepts behind the classification of language assessments. Thanks a lot.